So among those disappointed people with that failed launch is my next guest joining us live from Cornwall, lecturer at the University of Bath, Dr. Robert Watson. Dr. Watson, you're the project lead for TopCat, which would have seen atmosphere monitoring equipment taken to space on the satellites, on the rockets that were meant to go off. Before we talk about what TopCat is, because that's a fascinating topic in itself, just your reaction. We know that space is difficult. That's the saying. You must be gutted, though.
Yeah, well, obviously very, very disappointed. But, you know, that cliche, space is hard, exists for a reason. And it's everything has to go right. You know, I remember when the plane took off, saying to a colleague, you know, this is the first of a million things that has to go right, and the first one has gone right. But there's a whole sort of cascade of things that must continue to go absolutely right, almost perfectly, without any failures at all until we get to the end. So whilst there's the disappointment, I wouldn't say it's not nice. It's not a nice surprise, but it's not entirely unexpected.
So yeah, an awful lot, as you say, can go wrong. Let's look forward, because TopCat, it's described as atmosphere monitoring equipment. Just talk us through your collaboration with the team there.
So our part of the project was on the so-called CIRCE spacecraft, which stands for sort of combined ionospheric sort of CubeSat experiment. So the idea was to image this region of the atmosphere called the ionosphere, which is between about 100 and say 1,500 kilometers above the Earth. So we're very used to having sort of terrestrial weather, the sort of thing that we're experiencing still here now in Newquay, lots of rain. We're used to that, and that occurs really in the lowest 10 kilometers of the atmosphere. So we're talking of a very much higher region of the atmosphere that's strongly influenced by the sun, but through which many of our communication satellites have to travel through. So our communication satellites live in this region, and the signals that they emit pass through. And that region of the atmosphere can actually have a significant effect on both the satellites themselves in terms of their electronics operation, but also in terms of the radio signals that they send through. And unlike the sort of the troposphere, we don't have sort of weather stations dotted around all over the place. There are relatively few observations of space weather actually in orbit. So this was a really nice opportunity to get what was a very nice suite of instruments from the UK and the US all together on one platform and actually make a combined observatory.
So this combined observatory, for us lay people back on the ground, it's things like enabling the GPS systems that we all use to work a little bit more efficiently. Tangibly, what difference would this make for someone like me?
Well, that's a great example. I mean, if you look at a recent launch by the Starlink system, I mean, I think they lost something like 40 satellites due to a space weather event. So one of the things that we can learn from studying the space weather environment is knowing when to turn things off. In other words, when things are so severe that there might be sort of impactful damage to satellites. And if we can turn them off, then we can actually potentially prevent them. In terms of actually the radio signals going through, actually building models of exactly how these things are affected might tell us and might enable us to make more robust satellite navigation systems. So in other words, don't trust your satellite system, implicitly during these sorts of conditions.
Oh, on those wise words, we'll leave it there. But Dr. Watson, lead of the TopCat project, I'm sure there will be another opportunity to see this go successfully. For the time being, though, thanks very much for being our guest here on BBC World News. Thank you.
Thank you.